My dear friends, perhaps tonight the room is quiet, but something inside you is still burning. The lamp has been turned off. The day has folded its noise into the walls. Your body has come to the bed like a tired traveler, asking for rest. And yet, behind the closed eyes, small flames continue to move. A face you saw, a sentence you heard, a desire you did not follow, a desire you did follow, a fear, a comparison, a bright image from a screen, still glowing in the dark water of the mind. You may think you are failing because sleep has not come, but do not be harsh with yourself. A mind that has been touched all day by color, sound, praise, blame, wanting, resisting, cannot always become cool simply because the night has arrived. Sometimes the eyes are closed, but seeing continues. Sometimes the ears are silent, but hearing continues. Sometimes the body is still, but the heart is carrying fire. So tonight, we will not fight the fire. We will sit near it gently and learn why it burns. Long before our nights were lit by screens, the awakened one pointed to this same hidden flame. And when we speak of this hidden flame, my dear friends, we must speak with great tenderness. This is not a night for blaming yourself, not for saying, I should be calmer by now, or I should have more discipline, or why can I not simply close my eyes and disappear into sleep? A heart that has been touched by many things cannot always become still on command. A mind that has spent the whole day reaching, defending, comparing, wanting, resisting, cannot be forced into peace like a door slammed shut. So let us enter this teaching gently. Tonight, we will listen to a moment retold in Old Path White Clouds, where the awakened one points not to a fire in the forest, nor a fire on an altar, but to a fire moving through the very gates of human experience. The eye and what it sees, the ear and what it hears, the body and what it touches, the mind and what it remembers, imagines, fears, and desires. But we must be careful. This fire is not a punishment. It is not a curse. It is not proof that you are broken. It is only a pattern, repeated so often that it begins to feel like yourself. A sight touches the eye. A sound touches the ear. A thought touches the mind. Then wanting rises, or anger rises, or fear rises. And before we know it, the hand reaches for another piece of wood. Before we walk toward that ancient mountain, my dear friends, let us first return to this body that has carried the day. Do not ask yourself to let go yet. Sometimes the heart cannot release simply because it is commanded to release. So we begin more gently. Let the shoulders know that, for this moment, they do not have to hold the whole sky. Let them soften, even a little. Let the jaw unclench as if a small gate has opened after a long day of being guarded. Let the tongue rest. Let the space around the eyes become quiet. Feel the back of the head being received. Feel the neck no longer needing to lift itself. Feel the weight of the arms, the hands, the fingers. And now, bring a kind attention to the chest. Not to change it, not to make it peaceful by force, only to notice whether there is warmth there, tightness there, a small ember still glowing. Let the breath come as it comes, a little shallow, perhaps, a little uneven, perhaps. It is still breath. It is still life moving softly through you. Beneath all of this, the bed is holding you, the night is holding the bed, and nothing has to be solved before we listen. So let us listen, my dear friends. In the old telling preserved in Old Path White Clouds, there came a day when the community gathered on the summit of Elephant Head Mountain at Gayasisa. By then, the 3 Kasapa brothers and their many disciples had entered the path of the robe. Their hair had been cut. Their former marks had been set down. The cloth of renunciation now rested on their shoulders, simple and quiet, carrying no ornament except the dust of the road and the discipline of a new life. It was after the alms round. The meal had been taken in silence. 900 monks sat with the Buddha and the three Kassapa brothers. Dignified and still, there was no hurry in that gathering. No one was reaching for the next thing. No voice was trying to rise above another voice. The mountain itself seemed to be listening. The day was warm, but not fierce. Stone held the sunlight in its body. A faint wind moved across the high ground, touching the edges of the robes. Perhaps there was the dry scent of earth, the clean scent of cloth warmed by the sun, the fading fragrance of simple food that had been received and eaten with gratitude. Below them, the world continued in its ordinary way. Villages, roads, trees, distant movement. But on that height, something had become very still. The monks gathered around the Buddha. He sat solemnly upon a stone, not as a king sits above subjects, but as a mountain sits among mountains, unmoving, open, present. And there, my dear friends, the teaching began, not with thunder, not with accusation, not with a miracle to frighten the heart, only a calm voice, rising in the mountain air, turning the minds of those who listened toward a fire they had not yet fully seen. Not a fire in the forest, not a fire on an altar, but a fire passing through the very gates by which human beings meet the world. And among those who sat there, my dear friends, were not weak men, nor foolish men, nor men without discipline. They were seekers. For many years, the Kassapa brothers and their followers had lived with sincerity. They had practiced austerity. They had studied. They had led others. Uruvala Kassapa, the elder among them, had been honored by many. His bearing was firm, his mind sharp, his presence strong enough that hundreds trusted him and followed his way. So when we see him seated there now, in the robe of a monk, we must not see defeat. We must see courage. His head had been shaved. His former clothing had been set aside. The marks by which others had known him were gone. Yet his dignity had not been taken from him. It had only become quieter. Perhaps his hands still remembered the discipline of tending sacred fire. Hands that once arranged wood, protected flame, watched smoke rise into the morning air. Hands trained by years of ritual, patience, and belief. Now those same hands rested still upon his lap. This is how deep change often looks. My dear friends, not like noise, not like collapse, but like a man sitting very still while an old certainty loosens inside him. Around him sat the others, 900 in all, each one wearing the simple robe, each one carrying a life that had not vanished simply because the hair had fallen to the ground. A man may change his robe in a day, but the mind does not change all its habits so quickly. The body can sit in silence while the old ways of seeing still move beneath the skin. And this was their hidden wound. If we may speak gently of it, not stupidity, not sin, but the ancient human wound of mistaking the flame we can see for the freedom we cannot yet understand. They had known outer fire. They had honored it. They had lived near it. But now, before the Buddha, they were about to hear of another fire, one not fed by branches, not protected by ritual, not rising from an altar. A fire in the eye, a fire in the ear, a fire in the mind that reaches, resists, and dreams. And perhaps, as they sat on that mountain, some quiet part of them already understood. The most dangerous fire is not always the one that burns the hand. Sometimes it is the one that teaches the hand to keep reaching. And then, my dear friends, the Buddha began to name the fire. He did not speak as one who wished to frighten the monks. He spoke as one who had seen clearly in the deepest chamber of human experience. His voice did not need to rise. Truth, when it is complete, does not need to shout. He pointed first to the eye, not only the eye of the body, but the whole doorway of seeing, the shape, the color, the face, the beautiful thing, the disturbing thing, the thing remembered long after it is gone. The eye, he taught, is burning, The forms seen by the eye are burning. The knowing that arises from seeing is also burning. Then the ear. The ear is burning. Sounds are burning. The knowing that arises when sound touches the ear is burning. A word of praise. A word of blame. A voice that once wounded us. A silence that we do not understand. All of it can become flame when the mind does not see clearly. Then the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. Scent, taste, touch, thought, memory, imagination, fear, desire. The mind reaching toward what pleases it. The mind pushing away what disturbs it. The mind building a small world from each contact. Then suffering inside the world it has built. And with great clarity, the Buddha named the fuel, the fire of craving, the fire of hatred, the fire of delusion. Not a fire placed upon us by the sky, not a fire sent as punishment, a fire fed by the way we cling, resist, and misunderstand. Then he showed how wide the burning goes. Birth burns, aging burns, sickness burns, death burns, sorrow, grief, worry, fear, and disappointment burn when the mind is caught in them and believes there is no way out. On that mountain, my dear friends, the teaching was simple, but it was not small. It was as if the Buddha opened a lamp inside the human being and showed that every doorway can become a doorway of suffering when there is no wisdom guarding it. And perhaps this is why the night can feel so hot inside us. Even when the world is quiet, the eye remembers, the ear remembers, the body remembers. The mind keeps touching what is no longer here. And each touch, if unseen, can become another flame. And after contact, my dear friends, comes feeling. This is a very quiet place in the teaching, but it is also the place where many fires begin. A form touches the eye, and something in us says, pleasant. A sound touches the ear, and something in us says, painful. A thought touches the mind, and something in us says, I do not know what this is, but I do not want to stay with it. The Buddha showed that even feeling is burning. Not only the feeling that hurts, not only the grief, the anger, the fear, the humiliation that tightens the throat in the dark. Even a pleasant feeling can burn when the mind reaches for it and says, more, stay, become mine, do not leave. And even a neutral feeling can burn. My dear friends, the plain moment, the quiet room, the ordinary breath, the space where nothing exciting is happening. If the heart has forgotten how to rest, even stillness can feel like an enemy. This is why one small spark can become an entire night of unrest. A memory appears. At first, it is only a memory. Then the body warms. The chest tightens. The jaw becomes firm. The hand wants to move. The mind begins to build a story around the feeling. Pleasure becomes hunger. Pain becomes resistance. Emptiness becomes the search for another brightness. But feeling itself is not the enemy. A feeling is only a visitor at the door of awareness. It comes because conditions have gathered. It changes because conditions change. It does not need to become a command. My dear friends, this is a small but merciful truth. Not every flame that appears must become a fire we obey. So if, tonight, a feeling rises in you, warmth, ache, longing, irritation, loneliness, do not hurry to defeat it. Do not hurry to feed it. For one breath, simply know, a feeling has touched the mind, and in that knowing, the spark has already met a little space. And when a feeling is not seen clearly, my dear friends, it does not remain alone for long. It begins to look for a path. First, it moves through the mind. A pleasant feeling whispers, more. An unpleasant feeling whispers, make it stop. An empty feeling whispers, find something, anything, to fill this space. And if wisdom is not present, the mind obeys before it even knows it has obeyed. This is how a spark becomes a habit. A thought appears, then another thought comes to protect the first one. Then a third thought comes to explain why the first two must be true. Soon, the mind is no longer touching a simple feeling. It is living inside a whole house built of smoke. Then the body joins. The hand reaches. The eyes open again. The body turns toward another brightness. Another sound. Another small promise of relief. Perhaps it is only one more image. One more message. One more memory visited in the dark. But each movement says to the fire, "Here, take this also." Then speech joins. Even when no words are spoken aloud. The mouth may be silent, but inside, a conversation continues. We answer someone who is not here. We defend ourselves before an invisible judge. We say the sentence we wish we had said. We blame. We explain. We accuse. We beg. We rehearse. And the night listens. This, my dear friends, is karma in its most intimate form, not a punishment from somewhere far away, but the momentum of body, speech, and mind moving again in the direction they have been trained to move. A sight touches the eye. A feeling rises. The mind reaches. The hand follows. The inner voice speaks. The body grows warmer. Sleep moves farther away. No thunder. No curse. Only a small chain, link by link, made in the privacy of our own awareness. But because it is a chain, it also has links. And because it has links, there is a place where it can be softened, not broken with violence, not conquered with shame, only seen. Perhaps tonight, the new seed begins in a very small place. The hand rests before reaching. The tongue rests before speaking. The mind notices a story before entering it. One spark is allowed to be only a spark. One feeling is allowed to rise and fade. One piece of wood is not given to the fire. And in that little restraint, my dear friends, the whole night begins to cool. And then, my dear friends, the Buddha did not leave the monks standing before the fire without a way to understand it. He showed them how to look. This is the mercy of true teaching. It does not only point to suffering and say, "There it is." It opens a path through suffering, quietly, like a hand opening a window in a room filled with smoke. The eye burns when it is caught. The ear burns when it is caught. The mind burns when it is caught. But when seeing is known as seeing, it begins to loosen. When hearing is known as hearing, it does not have to become a wound. When a thought is known as a thought, it no longer needs to become a command. The Buddha guided them to see that all these things arise because conditions have gathered. A form appears because there is an eye and light and attention. A sound is known because there is an ear and vibration and awareness. A feeling rises because contact has occurred. And because these things arise through conditions, they also change when conditions change. This is a quiet liberation. My dear friends, the flame is not a solid thing. The desire is not a solid thing. The anger is not a solid thing. The fear in the chest, the heat in the face, the old story returning in the night, none of it is fixed forever. It is born. It changes. It fades when it is no longer fed. So the practice is not to hate the eye, or silence the ear, or punish the mind for being human. The practice is to see the chain before the chain becomes a prison. A sight, a feeling, a reaching, a story, a fire. When the chain is seen, even softly, one link begins to lose its power. And perhaps, on that mountain, this was the first cool breeze moving through the assembly. The discovery that freedom does not begin by destroying the world. It begins by seeing clearly what is burning and not becoming its servant. And this, my dear friends, is the turning of the teaching. For many people, suffering begins with the belief that the world must become quiet before the heart can be quiet. They think, if only there were no difficult words, if only there were no tempting images, if only no one had hurt me, if only the past would stop returning, if only my mind would obey me, But the Buddha's teaching on the mountain did not ask the monks to destroy the eye, silence the ear, or cut the mind away from life. He showed something more subtle and more merciful. The world touches us. This is natural. A form appears. A sound arrives. A memory rises. A feeling moves through the chest like heat beneath a closed door. This is not yet bondage. This is only contact. This is only life meeting life. The burning begins when the mind adds its ancient hunger. I want this to stay. I want this to leave. I want this to prove who I am. I want this to never touch me again. Then the eye is no longer simply seeing. It is grasping. The ear is no longer simply hearing. It is defending. The mind is no longer simply knowing. It is building a room and locking itself inside. So the freedom is not in making the world disappear. Freedom begins when seeing is just seeing again. When hearing is just hearing again. When a thought is allowed to be a thought, instead of becoming a master sitting on the throne of the night. My dear friends, this is a small doorway, but it is wide enough for peace to enter. You may not be able to choose every image that passed through your eyes today. You may not be able to erase every word that reached your ears. You may not be able to command every memory to leave the mind before sleep. But perhaps you can notice the next moment when the hand reaches for more wood. Perhaps you can feel the heat and not become the heat. Perhaps you can let one thought pass through the house without inviting it to live there. The fire does not need your hatred. It only needs less fuel. And when one piece of wood is not given, even the oldest flame begins to learn the shape of cooling. So, my dear friends, let us bring this teaching down from the mountain and hold it in the palm of the night. The Buddha spoke of 6 doors. The eye is one door. The ear is one door. The nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind are also doors. Through these doors, the world enters us. A color enters through the eye. A voice enters through the ear. A scent, a taste, a touch, a memory, a fear, a wish. Each one comes to the threshold of awareness. The problem is not that the doors exist. A human life must have doors. Without them, there would be no sunrise, no music, no warm hand held in another hand, no memory of kindness, no taste of water when the body is thirsty. The problem begins when something enters, and the mind forgets how to simply know it. A sight enters, and the mind says, I must have this. A sound enters, and the mind says, I must defend myself. A thought enters, and the mind says, this is who I am. A feeling enters, and the mind says, this must stay, or this must go. Then the door becomes a furnace. But between the entering and the burning, there is a very small space. Small as a breath. Small as the pause before the hand moves. Small as the moment before the tongue speaks. Small as the quiet recognition. This is only a feeling. My dear friends, this space is not dramatic. No one may see it from the outside. It will not announce itself with bright light. Yet it is one of the most precious places in the human heart. In that space, you do not have to obey every wanting. You do not have to become every anger. You do not have to follow every fear into its dark room. You do not have to turn every thought into a story about yourself. You can know the eye as the eye. The sound is sound. The feeling is feeling. The thought is thought. And when things are known in this simple way, they begin to lose their power to burn the whole house down. The door remains open, but the fire is no longer given everything it asks for. And now, my dear friends, let the mountain become this room. Let the stone beneath the Buddha become the quiet weight of your bed. Let the gathered monks become all the parts of you that have finally sat down after a long day of being pulled in many directions. Tonight, the fire may not look ancient. It may look like a small screen glowing in a dark room. A message you almost open. A headline that promises urgency. A face that awakens comparison. An image that stirs desire. A memory that asks you to suffer it one more time. The screen is not evil. The sound is not evil. The image is not evil. The mind is not evil for responding. These are only doors. And doors are part of being human. But if the eye keeps asking for one more brightness, if the ear keeps searching for one more voice, if the mind keeps reaching for one more story to enter, then even a quiet room becomes full of smoke. You may have opened that light because you felt empty. You may have searched because you felt alone. You may have scrolled because silence felt too wide. There is no need to blame yourself for this. Just see it. See the hand before it reaches. See the hunger before it becomes obedience. See the loneliness before it disguises itself as craving. See the anger before it becomes a conversation with someone who is not here. My dear friends, the practice tonight is not to reject the world. It is to meet one contact with a little more wisdom. One image can be only an image. One sound can be only a sound. One thought can be only a thought. And the small light in your hand does not have to become the fire that keeps the whole house awake. So tonight, my dear friends, do not try to put out every fire. That would be too heavy a task for a tired heart. Only notice the nearest flame. A thought that wants to become a story. A memory that wants to be lived again. A desire that asks for one more image. A loneliness that reaches for one more sound. A fear that wants to rehearse tomorrow before tomorrow has come. Let them be known gently. Not hated. Not obeyed. Only known. Perhaps the hand can rest where it is. Perhaps the tongue can remain quiet. Perhaps the mind can feel the first heat of a thought and not follow it all the way into the forest. One piece of wood is not given. That is enough for tonight. The eye may still remember. The ear may still carry an echo. The body may still hold a little warmth from the day. But now there is also awareness. Soft and patient. Sitting beside the fire like a wise old friend. Let the breath move through the chest. Let the bed hold the weight you no longer need to hold alone. Let the room be dark without asking the mind to be perfect. Some fires fade not because we fight them, but because we stop feeding them. And if a little ember remains, let it glow quietly in the wide kindness of the night. You are safe enough to rest now. My dear friends, nothing more needs to be added. Nothing more needs to be burned.